Most people believe that building wealth is a matter of intelligence, luck, or complex mathematical formulas. They spend years studying charts, interest rates, and market trends, yet they remain stuck in the same financial patterns. The reality is that money is not a math problem, it is a psychological one. Your financial success is determined less by what you know and more by how you behave. To master the psychology of money is to understand the invisible scripts, the deep-seated beliefs and emotional triggers that dictate every dollar that enters or leaves your life. If you are ready to dismantle the mental barriers holding you back from true financial freedom, you are in the right place. To join our community of high performers and ensure you receive our deep dive blueprints for the 1% lifestyle, please subscribe to the Knowledge Hub. Your journey to a mastered life begins with the right information. Let's proceed. The first psychological barrier is the scarcity versus abundance lens. Most people were raised with a scarcity mindset, the belief that money is a limited resource and that for one person to win, another must lose. This creates a state of chronic financial anxiety. The 1%, however, operate from a position of strategic abundance. They don't see money as something to be hoarded, but as a tool to be circulated. They understand that wealth is created by providing value, and since the ability to provide value is infinite, the ability to create wealth is also infinite. Mastery begins when you stop viewing money through the lens of fear and start viewing it through the lens of utility. Secondly, we must address the ego trap. Many people use money as a tool for status signaling rather than wealth building. They buy things they don't need with money they don't have to impress people they don't like. In the psychology of money, there is a massive difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is current income. It is what you see: the cars, the watches, the houses. Wealth, however, is what you don't see. It is the assets that haven't been spent, the freedom to wake up and do whatever you want. The 99% chase the appearance of riches, while the 1% obsess over the reality of wealth. Furthermore, we must understand the concept of relative deprivation. Humans do not judge their financial success in a vacuum, they judge it relative to those around them. This is why a person earning $100,000 can feel poor if all their neighbors earn $200,000. Mastery of the mind in a financial context requires you to disconnect your self-worth from your relative standing. You must learn to play your own game. The moment you stop trying to keep up with the Joneses, you gain a massive psychological advantage. You stop burning your capital on liabilities and start investing it in your freedom. Another vital component is the psychology of risk. Most people are loss-averse. The pain of losing $1,000 is psychologically twice as powerful as the joy of gaining $1,000. This bias keeps people paralyzed in low-yield safe bets while inflation eats their savings. The 1% practice calculated symmetry. They don't avoid risk, they manage it. They look for opportunities where the downside is capped and the upside is unlimited. They have trained their minds to view a loss not as a failure, but as the cost of admission for the game of wealth. By decoupling their identity from individual outcomes, they remain rational when everyone else is panicking. We also have to consider the sunk cost fallacy. This is the tendency to continue investing in a losing proposition, whether it's a bad stock, a failing business, or a dead-end career, simply because you have already invested so much time or money into it. A master of financial psychology knows how to cut the cord. They realize that the money spent is gone forever, and the only question that matters is, given where I am today, what is the best move for my future? They are ruthlessly forward-looking, refusing to let the ghost of past investments haunt their future potential. Finally, we must talk about the compounding mindset. Evolution did not prepare our brains to understand exponential growth. We think linearly, $1 plus $1 plus $1, but wealth grows exponentially. The 99% get discouraged because they don't see massive results in the first year, so they quit. The 1% understand that the most powerful part of wealth building happens at the end of the curve. They have the psychological stamina to stay the course during the boring middle. They know that discipline over decades is the only secret to legendary wealth. In this first step, we have established that money is a mirror of your internal state. We have looked at scarcity, ego, risk, and the power of compounding. You are beginning to see that the road to wealth is paved with mental clarity, not just hard work. As we move into step 2, we will explore the architecture of financial habits. We will discuss how to automate your wealth, how to eliminate friction in your savings, and why your environment is the biggest predictor of your bank account. The 99% view wealth as a destination, a specific number in a bank account that they hope to reach one day through a stroke of luck or a massive surge of willpower. The 1% understand that wealth is a system. It is the byproduct of an architecture of habits that makes financial growth automatic and inevitable. In this stage of mastery, we move from the philosophy of money to the mechanics of behavior. To master your finances, you must design an environment where the right financial choices happen without you even thinking about them. The first pillar of this architecture is the law of financial friction. Just as we discussed in the Discipline Masterclass, your environment dictates your actions. If it is easy to spend money, one-click ordering, saved credit card details, and constant marketing notifications, you will spend it. The 1% intentionally add friction to their consumption. They delete shopping apps, unsave their card details, and implement a 48-hour rule for any non-essential purchase. By creating a gap between the impulse to buy and the action of buying, they allow their rational mind to override their emotional cravings. They don't rely on willpower, they rely on a well-designed barrier. Secondly, we must address the automation of abundance. The human brain is prone to decision fatigue. Every time you have to manually decide to save money or invest, you are using up limited cognitive resources. The 99% wait until the end of the month to see what's left to save. The 1% use the pay-yourself-first model, but they take it a step further by automating it. Before they even see their paycheck, a percentage is automatically diverted into investment accounts. By making wealth building invisible, they remove the psychological pain of parting with money. You cannot spend what you do not see. Furthermore, we must understand the concept of lifestyle creep. This is the psychological phenomenon where, as your income increases, your needs magically expand to match it. You get a raise, and suddenly you need a better car, a bigger house, or more expensive vacations. The 99% are trapped in a perpetual cycle of earning more and wanting more, leaving their net worth at zero. The master of financial psychology practices relative frugality. They maintain a standard of living that is consistently below their means, regardless of how much they earn. They understand that the gap between your income and your expenses is the only place where freedom is born. We also have to consider the psychology of found money. When people receive unexpected cash, a tax refund, a bonus, or a gift, they treat it differently than the money they earn through labor. They view it as play money and spend it impulsively. This is a cognitive bias known as mental accounting. The 1% treat every dollar the same, regardless of its source. They don't let the source of the money dictate its use. By maintaining a singular, unified strategy for all capital, they ensure that windfalls accelerate their freedom rather than funding temporary distractions. Another vital component is the high-value circle. Your financial habits are highly contagious. If you spend your time with people who view debt as normal, expensive dinners as a requirement, and luxury brands as an identity, you will eventually mirror those behaviors to fit in. This is the social default. The 1% are ruthlessly protective of their social environment. They surround themselves with individuals who talk about assets, cash flow, and long-term vision. When your normal social circle views investing as a priority, you don't need discipline to invest. You just do it to keep up with the collective standards of the group. We must also look at the cost-per-use logic. The 99% are often penny-wise and pound-foolish. They will spend hours searching for a coupon to save $2 on groceries, but will impulsively spend $2,000 on a vacation they can't afford. A master of financial psychology evaluates every purchase based on its utility over time. They are willing to invest heavily in things that increase their productivity, health, or long-term happiness, high utility, while they are ruthless in cutting low-utility expenses that provide only a fleeting dopamine hit. They don't buy cheap things, they buy valuable things. Finally, we must address the psychology of debt. In the modern world, debt is marketed as a tool for lifestyle. The 99% use debt to buy things that depreciate: cars, clothes, electronics, effectively mortgaging their future for a present they haven't earned. This creates a state of financial serfdom. The 1% view debt with extreme caution. They only use it as leverage to acquire assets that produce more income than the cost of the debt itself. They understand that every dollar of high-interest consumer debt is a chain around their neck, and they prioritize its destruction with a religious intensity. In this second step, we have moved from the why of money to the how. You have learned to create friction for spending, automate your growth, resist lifestyle creep, and curate your social circle. You are building the physical and digital infrastructure that will support your ascent. As we move into step 3, we will discuss the emotional mastery of markets. We will explore how to stay calm during a crash, the psychology of FOMO, and how to cultivate the patience of a predator. The market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient, and it's time to ensure you are on the receiving end. The 99% view the stock market or any investment arena as a casino, a place driven by luck, tips, and chaotic energy. The 1% understand that the market is essentially a giant machine for measuring human emotion. Prices don't move based on math, they move based on hope, fear, greed, and panic. To master the psychology of money, you must learn to detach your nervous system from the fluctuating numbers on a screen. You must develop the patience of a predator and the emotional stoicism to remain rational when the rest of the world is losing its mind. The first psychological trap in the market is FOMO, fear of missing out. When an asset, be it a stock, a cryptocurrency, or real estate, starts skyrocketing, the 99% feel a painful urge to jump in. They see others making easy money and their logic is bypassed by greed. This is usually the exact moment the smart money is selling. Mastery requires you to realize that the most expensive thing you can own is a hot tip. The 1% have the discipline to watch an opportunity pass them by if it doesn't fit their criteria. They understand that the market is like a bus station. If you miss one bus, another one will be along shortly. You don't chase, you wait at the station. Secondly, we must address the pain of the drawdown. It is easy to be a long-term investor when the sun is shining and the portfolio is green. But when the market crashes by 20%, 30%, or 50%, the 99% experience loss aversion in its most brutal form. The psychological pain of seeing their hard-earned money evaporate triggers a fight-or-flight response, and they sell at the bottom to save what's left. The master of financial psychology understands that you only lose money when you sell. They view a market crash not as a tragedy, but as a Black Friday sale for assets. They have the stomach to stay the course because their identity is not tied to their net worth. Furthermore, we must understand the concept of recency bias. This is the tendency to believe that what has happened recently will continue to happen forever. If the market has been going up for 5 years, people assume it will never fall. If it's been crashing for a month, they assume it's going to zero. This leads to the classic mistake of buying high and selling low. Mastery involves cultivating countercyclical thinking. You must learn to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. This sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest psychological feats to perform because it requires you to go against the entire tribe. Another vital component is the illusion of knowledge. In the age of 24-hour news cycles and financial experts on social media, the 99% suffer from information overload. They believe that by watching more news and reading more reports, they are gaining an edge. In reality, they are just consuming noise. The more frequently you check your investments, the more likely you are to see volatility as risk. A master of the mind knows that the best thing you can do for your portfolio is often to do nothing. They check their accounts once a quarter, not once an hour. They understand that wealth is grown in the waiting, not in the trading. We also need to discuss the gambler's fallacy. This is the mistaken belief that if something happens more frequently than normal during a given period, it will happen less frequently in the future and vice versa. For example, the market has been down for 5 days, so tomorrow must be a green day. The market has no memory. It doesn't owe you a recovery and it doesn't care about your break-even point. The 1% operate based on probabilities, not certainties. They accept that the market can remain irrational longer than they can remain solvent. so they never bet the farm on a single outcome. Finally, we must talk about the endowment effect. This is the psychological bias where we value things more highly simply because we own them. This leads people to hold on to zombie investments, businesses, or assets that are clearly failing because they are emotionally attached to them. They think, I can't sell now, I've owned this for years. The master of financial psychology practices objective detachment. Every morning, they mentally sell everything they own and ask, if I had cash today, would I buy this asset at its current price? If the answer is no, they exit. They are married to their goals, not their investments. In this third step, we have fortified your emotional response to the chaos of the markets. You have learned to ignore FOMO, embrace the drawdown, filter the noise, and remain objective. You are moving from being a gambler to being a strategist. As we move into step 4, we will discuss the social architecture of wealth. We will explore how to handle family and friends who hold you back, the psychology of negotiation, and why your social capital is often more valuable than your financial capital. The 99% view wealth as a solo sport, a private battle between them and their bank account. The 1% understand that money is deeply social. Every dollar you earn comes from another person, and every financial opportunity is hidden within a network. However, your social circle can either be a rocket ship or an anchor. To master the psychology of money, you must learn to navigate the complex social dynamics of wealth, from managing the crab mentality of your peers to building high-value social capital. The first social hurdle is the solidarity of the poor. When you begin to change your financial psychology and build wealth, you will inevitably face resistance from those you leave behind. This isn't always malicious, it's a defense mechanism. If you succeed, it proves that their excuses are invalid. You may face guilt-tripping, subtle mockery, or pressure to spend money just to stay one of the guys. The 1% practice strategic boundary setting. They realize that you cannot take everyone with you on the path to the top. You must be willing to be the outsider in your old circles to become a peer in your new ones. Secondly, we must address the psychology of negotiation. Most people view negotiation as a conflict, a win-lose battle where they feel greedy for asking for more. This is a psychological block that costs the average person millions over their lifetime. The master of financial psychology views negotiation as collaborative problem solving. They understand that the first person to mention a number often loses their leverage. They focus on the value provided rather than the hours worked. By mastering the art of detachment during a deal, they ensure they are paid what they are worth, not what they are willing to settle for. Furthermore, we must understand the law of reciprocity. Wealth is not just about taking, it's about the strategic distribution of value. The 99% are takers, they only reach out when they need something. The 1% are givers, they lead with value, knowing that the social debt created will eventually return to them tenfold. This is the psychology of social capital. By helping others solve their problems without an immediate expectation of return, you build a reservoir of goodwill. When you eventually need a door opened or a deal funded, those doors open because you've already paid the entrance fee through your previous generosity. Another vital component is the status game versus the wealth game. In social settings, humans are hardwired to seek status. The 99% seek positional status, having a better car or a bigger title than their neighbor. This is a zero-sum game that drains your capital. The 1% seek functional status, the status that comes from being the most competent, resourceful, and reliable person in the room. They don't care if they look like the poorest person at the table as long as they own the table. By opting out of the status treadmill, you free up the mental and financial resources required to build a real empire. We also need to discuss the psychology of family and money. Money is the leading cause of stress in relationships because it carries the weight of our deepest insecurities and childhood traumas. The 99% treat money as a taboo topic, leading to financial infidelity and hidden resentments. The master of financial psychology practices radical financial transparency with their inner circle. They have the hard conversations early. They set clear expectations regarding loans to family members and joint expenses. They understand that a lack of clear communication is a silent tax on their peace of mind. Finally, we must talk about the power of proximity. You are the average of the people you spend the most time with. If your friends spend their weekends escaping their lives through expensive consumption, you will too. If your friends spend their weekends building their lives through learning and investing, you will mirror that. Mastery involves environment design. You must seek out wealth mentors, not just people with money, but people with the psychology of wealth. Proximity to high-level thinkers normalizes success. When you see someone earn in a day what you earn in a year, your psychological ceiling shatters. In this fourth step, we have moved the financial battle from your head to your environment. You have learned to set boundaries, negotiate with power, lead with value, and curate your tribe. You are building the social infrastructure that makes wealth sustainable and scalable. As we move into our final step 5, we will explore the philosophy of abundance and legacy. We will discuss the end game of money, how to avoid the hedonic treadmill, and how to use your wealth to create a legacy that outlives you. We will conclude with the final call to action for the Knowledge Hub. The final stage of financial mastery is the transition from acquisition to purpose. The 99% spend their entire lives chasing a number, only to realize that the number itself provides no lasting satisfaction. They are trapped on the hedonic treadmill where every increase in wealth is met by an equal increase in expectations, leaving them perpetually unfulfilled. The 1% understand that money is a fuel, not the destination. True mastery of financial psychology is knowing how to use that fuel to power a life of meaning, freedom, and lasting impact. To reach this peak, you must master the enough threshold. One of the most dangerous psychological states is the inability to stop moving the goalposts. If you don't define what enough looks like, you will spend your life in a state of financial insecurity, regardless of how many millions you possess. The master of money practices goalpost fixation. They set a clear target for their lifestyle, and once reached, they pivot their energy from more to better. They realize that after a certain point, the marginal utility of an extra dollar is nearly zero, but the marginal utility of an extra hour of freedom is infinite. Furthermore, we must embrace the concept of time sovereignty. The ultimate purpose of wealth is not to buy things, but to buy time. The 99% use their money to buy liabilities that require more of their time to maintain. The 1% use their money to buy back their hours. They understand that the highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, "I can do whatever I want today." This is psychological freedom. When you prioritize time wealth over material wealth, your relationship with work changes. You no longer work because you must, but because you choose to. This shift in mindset paradoxically makes you more productive and creative. We also need to discuss the psychology of philanthropy and contribution. True abundance is the realization that you have more than you need. The 99% operate from a clenched fist mentality, afraid that if they give, they will have less. The master operates with an open hand. They understand the paradox of generosity. The more value you pour into the world, the more value the world reflects back to you. Contribution is the ultimate cure for financial anxiety. When you use your wealth to solve problems for others, you reinforce a deep subconscious belief in your own resourcefulness and abundance. You move from a consumer to a creator. Another vital component is the legacy architecture. Most people leave their wealth to chance, hoping their children will manage it well. The 1% understand that without the psychology of wealth, financial wealth is quickly dissipated. They focus on generational programming. They don't just leave money, they leave a family constitution, a set of values, principles, and mental frameworks that ensure the wealth survives and thrives. They teach their heirs how to think about risk, value, and work. They understand that a legacy is not a pile of cash, but a lineage of empowered minds. Finally, we must address the mortality filter. At the end of life, no one wishes they had spent more time at the office or owned a more expensive car. They regret the risks they didn't take, the people they didn't help, and the experiences they missed. A master of the psychology of money uses the deathbed perspective to make financial decisions today. They invest in memory dividends, experiences that pay back joy for the rest of their lives. They use their capital to create stories, not just balance sheets. They realize that you can't take the money with you, but you can leave the world better than you found it. Financial freedom isn't a dream, it's a psychological result. You now possess the complete 1% blueprint for the psychology of money. You have the tools to break the chains of debt, bypass the traps of the ego, and build a legacy that lasts for generations. But knowledge without AC. Tian is just a daydream. To stay ahead of the curve and receive our next deep dive masterclass on the high-performance lifestyle, subscribe to the Knowledge Hub now. Join the elite community that is actively rewriting their scripts and dominating their fields. If this series has shifted your mindset, share it with a friend who is ready to level up. Your path to mastery is just beginning, and we are here to provide the fuel for your journey. Stay disciplined, stay sovereign, and go build your empire. We'll see you in the next masterclass.